Shalom. This week's Sedra is Sedra Devarim. The rarest of qualities found in national leaders is humility. This trait is so rare among leaders because the combination of the ego and self-confidence required to believe you can lead millions of other people. That ego robs most leaders the humility that other human beings possess. Humility inhibits a person from taking dangerous and risky steps and helps a world leader balance their ambition with proper caution. It's not surprising that history's greatest leader, as testified to by God, was also the world's most humble of people, Moshe. Humility is often confused with self-depreciation, where the words that one uses to describe themselves are the metrics of one's modesty. Boasting about one's positive actions can be taken as arrogance, and belittling oneself is seen as humility. That is frequently not the case, and in fact, a true description of one's actions, even when the actions are praiseworthy, can be the most humble expression. In this week's Torah portion, we find an example of Moshe describing his actions accurately, and at first glance they seem proud, but with a small measure of analysis are seen for what they truly are, a most humble expression of Moshe's self-awareness. In this week's Torah portion, Moshe discussed his appointment of judges and courts to deal with the overwhelming amount of disputes between the Israelites. God recorded that Moshe told the people, "I took your tribal leaders, wise and experienced men, and appointed them heads over you, judges of thousands, judges of hundreds, judges of 50s, and judges of 10s, and officials for your tribes. I instructed you at that time about the various things that you should do." Those familiar with the episode discussed earlier in the Torah of Moshe appointing judges remember that appointing judges and courts wasn't Moshe's idea, but the idea of his father-in-law, Yisro. It is curious that Moshe seems to take credit for the idea without mentioning his father-in-law in this week's Torah portion. Ramban was bothered by this question and explained, Moshe did not mention Yisro's advice here, nor did he attribute to him anything that Yisro proposed. It appears to me, said the Ramban, that Moshe did not want to mention the fact that he was following his father-in-law's advice in the presence of all of Israel because of his humility. Ramban offered a few more reasons, but the idea that not giving credit to someone who deserves it is an expression of humility is a fascinating take on humility. Moshe's humility was expressed by omitting Yisro's name because mentioning it could be seen as boasting that Moshe was willing to take the advice of someone else. By taking the credit for himself, Moshe wasn't boasting about his own political acumen and creativity, but rather hiding his greatest character trait, his ability to set aside his ego and recognize the sage advice of someone else. Sometimes the greatest act of humility is not done by hiding one's achievements while speaking honestly about lesser accomplishments. Rambam wrote about Moshe, if a man is only humble, he is not following a good path. Rather, he must hold himself lowly and his spirit very unassuming. That's why God described our teacher Moshe as very humble and not simply humble. Moshe's humility in this week's Torah portion instructs the Jewish people in an important lesson in demonstrating humility. The image of modesty is sometimes conflated with sheepishness. To be humble, one doesn't have to hide their accomplishments, but to convey them in an honest way that doesn't reveal everything it took to achieve them. What an important and really surprising lesson in this week's Torah portion. Shalom.